I'm Edward October. The sound you hear is a fox hunt on a misty, gray morning in the English countryside. Men in red are astride powerful hunters galloping behind foxhounds as they give chase. But who is the hunter and who is the hunted? This is the start of Octoberpod. I began writing this script on the day I woke up to the news of actor Sam Neill's death. He was 78 years old, though he could have easily passed for a man a decade younger. By the time you're hearing this, I'm sure your social media and news feeds will have already been flooded with tributes to the man. Nevertheless, I'd ask that you indulge me. Sam Neill was never a household name, though most people know him as Dr. Alan Grant from the Jurassic Park films. But he was quite versatile, with a long and storied career. Aside from the Jurassic films, his credits include The Hunt for Red October, Thor Ragnarok, A Cry in the Dark, Dead Calm, and The Simpsons, among many, many more. The Australian political satire, Children of the Revolution, is one of his lesser-known pictures you may want to check out. Did you know that Neill, a New Zealander originally from Northern Ireland, gained some early notoriety playing Riley, Ace of Spies in a British television miniseries? Now this caught the attention of the producers of the James Bond films, who brought him in for a screen test. That's right, Sam Neill could have been James Bond following the departure of Roger Moore, right around the time they were trying to get Pierce Brosnan out of his Remington Steele contract before ultimately hiring Timothy Dalton. He's pretty good, too. A snippet of his screen test can be found on the special features of various home video releases of The Living Daylights, though it's readily available for free on YouTube. In spite of all these varied film credits, Sam Neill was a horror icon in his own right. In addition to Jurassic Park, Neill starred in a number of horror films, thrillers, and monster movies, including Event Horizon, Possession, and Snow White, A Tale of Terror, as well as 2 John Carpenter films, Memoirs of an Invisible Man and In the Mouth of Madness. As a matter of fact, his final film will likely also be a monster movie, the upcoming Godzilla x Kong Supernova. I first discovered Sam Neill thanks to his starring role as Damien Thorne in 1981's The Final Conflict, the intended conclusion to the Omen trilogy. I'll be back during the intermission to do a deep dive into Neill's contribution to the Omen universe. But for now, our friend Brenda from the podcast Horrifying History is here, and she's got a pretty weird session in store for you. Brenda?
Welcome to Horrifying History, where you will hear about the unexplained and supernatural events that have stained the pages of history. Imagine moving your family into a house that you find out is haunted. Now imagine if that house was filled with more than 200 demons. What would you do? So break out your crucifixes, my spooky friends. You're about to hear the tale of a woman who claims that she and her family were possessed and the battle they endured to break free. Most horror movie fans out there love the Exorcist films. If you're one of these, you really should watch the 2024 Netflix movie called The Deliverance. This movie was directed by Academy Award nominee Lee Daniels and stars Andrea Day, Monique, Glenn Close, and more. This movie is based on real events, and Lee told The Hollywood Reporter that he heard about this story after he filmed the movie Precious, which won Academy Awards, Independent Spirit Awards, a Golden Globe Award, and many more. When Lee heard the story about LaToya Ammons and her family, he originally didn't want to make a movie about their lives. He said, and I quote, "1, I felt that I didn't want to do another story about abuse. This woman was abusing her kids, or what defines as abuse, because she was hitting the kids. And 2, I know how I work. I'm an open portal, and I know what I demand, and I know the spirit works through me. So what kind of spirits do I want on me? So I was just like, no, I'm not. But with time, Lee started to think differently. The story stayed with him and would not get out of his mind. He also said in the same interview, and I quote once more, "We have never seen this story through the lens of this African-American woman on screen, and I just felt we're in such dark times, and I don't think that people really know how dark of times we're in. And I felt I needed to get reconnected to my higher power." LaToya's tale is not easily explained away. If true, it's absolutely terrifying. Was LaToya abusing her kids, or was something abusing and tormenting the entire family? That is the question that Lee's movie brings up, and the question you'll be asking yourself by the end of the show today. Everything started back in November of 2011. It was a time of conflict with the Egyptian Revolution beginning, the trial of terrorist Carlos the Jackal starting, and Charlie Sheen getting fired from his TV show, 2.5 Men. During this time, LaToya Ammons, her mother, Rosa Campbell, and her 3 children, aged 7, 9, and 12, all moved into a rental home located at 3860 Carolina Street in Gary, Indiana. Gary is the U.S. state's 11th most populous city, which was dominated by major industry activity and steelworks. But soon, according to LaToya, it would be dominated by demons sent from hell. The one-story home was on a quiet street, and LaToya was looking forward to raising her kids in a fresh and stable environment. As she looked at the property on moving day, a small white house with a covered porch, she felt happy that she was going to be able to raise her kids in such a safe environment. But that feeling didn't last very long. Just days after moving in, black flies swarmed the porch. LaToya and her family did their best to exterminate them, but no matter what they did, the flies came back. Despite their best efforts, it seemed that no matter what they used, the flies wouldn't die. The family would later claim that the flies thrived on the poisons and the traps they set and multiplied at an alarming rate. Now, you're all probably thinking that swarms of flies can just happen, but this started in early December, my spooky friends. Indiana winters are known to be freezing and snowy. They get an average of 24.4 inches or 62 centimeters of snow. The average high temperatures would be just above freezing, and the state's record low was -36 Fahrenheit or -37.8 Celsius. Flies generally become inactive when temperatures drop below 50 Fahrenheit or 10 Celsius. These flies should have been dormant. LaToya's mother, Rosa, was the first to experience paranormal activity. She had moved in shortly after LaToya and her kids settled in, and immediately started noticing some very strange things. The doors to both the basement and kitchen would open and close all by themselves, even when it was locked. This would occur in the view of individuals who were nearby. On several occasions, Rosa heard the sound of someone walking around the basement when all the family members were upstairs and accounted for. Soon, LaToya was hearing the same thing her mother was, but now it wasn't just in the basement. The 2 women would later report that when they were together, they both heard footsteps going up the basement stairs and then heard the creak of the basement door opening. This occurred after midnight when all the children were in bed. One night, Rosa woke up to see a shadowy figure of a man pacing in the living room. When she got up to investigate, she found large wet boot prints on the floor. There was no one else in the house, and LaToya and her children were all asleep. It wasn't long afterwards that a very disturbing event happened. It was on March 10th, 2012, that the family's unease switched to fear. It happened at about 2 a.m., which wasn't a normal time where anyone in the house would be awake. They were up because they had family over, and they were all mourning a recent death of a loved one. Suddenly, Rosa heard screaming from her bedroom saying, "Mama! Mama!" She ran to her bedroom, where her 12-year-old granddaughter was staying with a friend. Inside the room was LaToya, looking at the girls in horror. This is when she saw her granddaughter levitating above her bed, unconscious. Her friend was sleeping peacefully near her. At this point, the guests came upstairs and saw what was happening. Not knowing what else to do, LaToya, Rosa, and their terrified friends surrounded the floating girl and started to pray. The girl started to drift lower and lower until she was lying back on her bed. LaToya's daughter had no memory of the incident, and people who were visiting all refused to return to that house. From there, things only got stranger. Over the next few months, the incidents worsened. LaToya's daughter and 2 sons started speaking intermittently in deep voices, and when they did, their eyes would bulge out of their heads and their mouths would twist into a terrifying smile. The family suffered from injuries after objects were thrown around the rooms. On top of this, now all of the children had been seen levitating above their beds and were being physically thrown across the room by something or someone unseen. On top of this, LaToya's youngest son allegedly had his eyes rolled back into his head as he approached his mother. He allegedly started to growl and said in a voice not his own, "It's time to die. I will kill you." At this point, Rosa and LaToya decided that they needed help. The 2 women contacted their local churches, but most of them refused to even listen to them. According to reporting from the Indy Star, one church official listened to LaToya's plight. They told her that it sounded like their home had spirits in it. They recommended that they clean the home using bleach and ammonia. Next, they were to use oil to draw a cross on every door and window. Lastly, they were to put oil on the feet and foreheads of each of LaToya's children. She and Rosa did all of this, and nothing changed. LaToya then reached out to 2 clairvoyants to ask them to investigate her home. These clairvoyants gave LaToya some terrifying news, that her home was besieged by more than 200 demons. This made complete sense to both LaToya and her mom because of their strong Christian faith. The clairvoyants told the women that they needed to move immediately, but moving was not an option for the cash-strapped family. The clairvoyants then gave LaToya a suggestion in an attempt to help. They told her to set up an altar in her basement. LaToya covered an end table with a white sheet, and then she placed a white candle and a statue of Mary, Joseph, and Jesus on it. LaToya and a friend then put on white t-shirts and wrapped white scarves around their heads. LaToya then opened a Bible to Psalm 91. In case you don't know about Psalm 91, it's a Bible passage that speaks about God's protection and refuge for those who trust in Him. It emphasizes themes of safety, security, and divine guidance, and is often cited during times of hardship or danger. It describes God as a refuge and a fortress, promising deliverance from threats. It also highlights the role of God's angels in guarding and protecting those who trust in God. The 2 then went upstairs and started burning sage and sulfur throughout the house as they made their way downwards. In each area, LaToya would make a cross with the smoke and read aloud this part of Psalm 91. "You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday." And you know what, my spooky friends? This worked. Nothing strange or paranormal occurred for 3 days, but on the 4th day, things got worse. LaToya and Rosa claimed that it was here that LaToya and her 3 children became possessed. They were now all speaking in deep voices, their eyes bulged, and they would have evil smiles on their faces. Rosa would later state that the demons didn't affect her because she was special. She and people like her were born with protection from evil because she had a guardian who protects her. My spooky friends, I guess the rest of us are just out of luck, but I digress. LaToya would later tell the press how she felt when she was possessed. She said she felt weak, lightheaded, and warm. Her body would shake, and she felt that she was not in control of her own body. LaToya would later tell the newspaper, the Indianapolis Star, and I quote, "You can tell it's different. Something supernatural." Now, if all this wasn't bad enough, LaToya's 7-year-old was thrown out of the bathroom by someone or something unseen. He also would often speak to what he said was a young boy that no one else could see. Next, LaToya's daughter had her head driven into a headboard when she was alone in the room. The wound she received was so severe that LaToya had to bring her to the hospital to get stitches. Her daughter would later tell mental health professionals that she, at times, felt like she was being choked and was being held down by something she could not see, completely unable to move. She also alleged that she would hear a voice saying that she would never again see her family and she wouldn't survive another 20 minutes. It didn't take very long for things to get so bad during the night that the family often left home to sleep at a nearby hotel. As you all can imagine, being kept up all night by 200 demons makes a person exhausted. Battling these entities all day and night resulted in the kids missing a substantial amount of school. This is when the authorities stepped in, but they weren't at all prepared for what they would find. They thought it was just another case of neglect or child abuse, but after getting involved, they weren't so sure. On April 19, 2012, the family visited their physician, Dr. Jeffrey Onewuku. LaToya told him what the family was enduring and hoped that he could somehow help them. Concerned about this discussion, Dr. Onewuku told the newspaper, the Indy Star, that it was bizarre. He then said, and I quote, "20 years, and I've never heard anything like that in my life. I was scared myself when I walked into the room." In this doctor's notes, he wrote that the family had a history of delusions of ghosts in their home, and they were all suffering from hallucinations. Can you blame him, my spooky friends? If I were a doctor hearing this story, the first place I would go is that they all have some very serious mental health issues. It makes more logical sense than having over 200 demons in their house. But what happened next was something that no one expected. During the appointment, according to the family, one of LaToya's sons cursed the doctor in a demonic-sounding voice. Then, the doctor and some of his staff witnessed LaToya's youngest son being lifted and thrown into a wall when no one was touching him. Now, as you all know, I used to work in frontline healthcare. I have never seen anyone thrown into a wall with unseen hands, but I did see 2 patients claim they were possessed. They weren't. They were both diagnosed with schizophrenia, so I can see why the doctor and his staff freaked out. Even without the throwing a patient into a wall thing, both of these patients' behavior and words made me wonder if possession could be real. But back to the story. The doctors asked one of his staff members to contact the police. He knew that there was a previous complaint made about LaToya to Children's Services back in 2009. He was also aware of LaToya's children having a history of irregular school attendance. He suspected that LaToya was abusing her children, but then her child was thrown into a wall right in front of him. He would later tell the Indy Star, and I quote once more in part, "They couldn't figure out exactly what was happening." According to the physician, about 7 or 8 police officers and several ambulances showed up at his clinic. As the police and emergency personnel took LaToya's children to the nearby Methodist hospital, someone contacted the Indiana Department of Child Services, otherwise known as the DCS. This caller, whose identity is unknown, asked for the DCS to investigate LaToya for possible child abuse and neglect. The caller suggested that LaToya had a mental illness and the children's actions were all just a performance for their mother. The case was assigned to DCS case manager and social worker Valerie Washington, who made her way to the hospital to start her investigation. At this point in the story, things take a drastic turn away from the other cases out there of alleged possession. Why? Because there are witnesses. In Valerie's intake report, she noted that the hospital examined LaToya and her children and found them all to be physically healthy. They were also seen by the hospital's psychiatrist, who concluded that LaToya was of sound mind. According to Valerie's original DCS report, the children were all very violent with each other in public, especially in front of LaToya. She continued to say that the police went to LaToya's home and found multiple shrines and Bibles throughout the house, and that LaToya claimed that she had taken her children to various temples and churches to remove the demons possessing them all. The report also said that medical staff saw LaToya's youngest child have a physical outburst, hitting and kicking his older brother and grandmother in the hospital. Valerie witnessed LaToya put her youngest in a gentle therapeutic hold, and her son became limp. LaToya then placed him on a hospital bed and tried to pull him out of his trance. After he pulled out of this, the boy claimed that he had no recollection of what happened. When Valerie came into the hospital room to evaluate LaToya and her children, LaToya's 7-year-old began to growl. His eyes rolled to the back of his head and his teeth were exposed. Next, he locked his hands around his older brother's throat. He started choking his brother and would not release his grip until several adults pried his hands off his brother's neck. This is when he stated that ghosts were attacking him and his brother. At the mention of this, the older brother started headbutting Rosa in her stomach. Rosa grabbed the boy's hands and started to pray. Now, for the next part of this, I will directly quote Valerie's report. I do recommend reading it for yourself because it's mind-boggling. You can find a link to this report in the show notes. So, as per this report, the 7-year-old boy, and I quote, "Child became aggressive and walked up the wall as if he was walking on the floor and did a flip over his grandmother." The episode was witnessed by the psych counselor and DCS worker FCM Washington. So after seeing this, Valerie and the psych counselor, Willie Lee Walker, ran from the room in terror. After all, they'd just seen a 9-year-old child with a weird grin on his face walk backwards up a wall to the ceiling and do a flip over his grandma while landing on his feet without letting go of Rosa's hand. As Willie would later tell the Star newspaper, and I quote again, "He walked up the wall, flipped over her, and stood there. There's no way he could have done that." Later, police asked Valerie if the boy ran up the wall like he was performing an acrobatic trick. She told them no, that he glided backwards on the floor, wall, and ceiling. As all this craziness was happening, LaToya was begging for the authorities to help her and her family. She told them that they all had to be in bed by 8 p.m. each night. If they were still awake by 11 p.m., the spirits would come out and keep them awake all night by throwing things, moving items around their home, and creating cold spots. She explained everything she did to try to remove the spirits from her and her children to no avail. All of this was told to attending physician, Dr. Richardson, and he thought that all of this was a joke. After his colleagues insisted it was the truth, Dr. Richardson went into the room where the children were being held with Valerie and Willie. Willie then asked the 9-year-old if he could walk up the wall again. The child responded that he didn't walk up any wall, nor could he. When he was asked to give it a try, he couldn't place his feet properly to do it or get his balance to even try. The DCS took emergency custody of LaToya's children without a court order. Medical staff attempted to place her wall-walking child into a facility to get a psychiatric evaluation. Each facility denied his admission. He ended up being placed at a location called Christian Haven. LaToya's other children were placed in a group home. The DCS did this thinking that they were ensuring the children's safety while they sorted out this bizarre case. On April 20th, 2012, the hospital chaplain reached out to Reverend Michael Maisonneuve, who was a priest at St. Stephen Martyr Parish, and asked him to perform an exorcism on LaToya's 9-year-old. He performed 3 exorcisms on the child and also did the same for LaToya before he blessed the family home. When later asked about this, Reverend Maisonneuve told the press that he was convinced that demons were tormenting LaToya and her family. He also believed that there were ghosts in the family's home. During his time in the house, he noted some very odd activity, including wet footprints in the living room. He also felt drawn to the area beneath the basement stairs. The concrete there was broken up, and the area was filled with dirt, and the Reverend theorized that some sort of satanic worship could have taken place there after he found various items buried in the dirt. Afterwards, LaToya and her mother Rosa returned to the home along with Valerie from the DCS and 3 police officers to inspect the home's condition. According to police records, one of the officers' audio recorders malfunctioned when they all arrived. The power light started to flash to indicate the batteries were dying, even though he had changed the batteries earlier that day. Another officer was able to record audio, and when he played it back, he heard an unknown voice whisper the word, "Hey." The police took photos, and in one of them, a cloudy white image resembling a face appears. Another photo shows a female figure in green. Neither of these were seen by anybody while they were in the house that day. So, what happened next? LaToya regained custody of her children in November of 2012 after moving to a new home and meeting the objectives of the DCS case plan for her family. In a DCS report from January 2013, it notes that LaToya and her children were participating in home-based therapy and had made progress. The report also says that the family was not experiencing any issues with ghosts or demons in their new home, and they were moving on with their lives. They also said, and I quote, "The family continues to attend church regularly on Sunday, but the family is no longer fixated solely on religion to explain or cope with the children's behavioral issues." So, were demons and ghosts haunting the Ammons family? There are a lot of different opinions on this. One of the officers who went to the house that day was the captain of the Gary Police Department, Charles Austin. He told the Indianapolis Star newspaper that he believed in ghosts and the supernatural, but never believed in demons until he walked into LaToya's home. He took some pictures in various places in the house with his iPhone, and these pictures showed strange silhouettes in them. When he got home, his garage door wouldn't open, even though it wasn't a power outage. He also claimed that the driver's seat in his personal vehicle started moving forward and backward on its own. After bringing his vehicle to his dealership to look for issues, the mechanic told him the motor on the driver's seat was broken, which would have caused him to be distracted driving and would have resulted in an accident. After these issues, the police chief became a believer. But not everyone believed LaToya's claims. Clinical psychologist Stacy Wright evaluated LaToya's youngest son when he was under the custody of DCS. In her report, she said that the boy would act like he was possessed when challenged, redirected, or asked questions that he didn't want to answer. She said he was coherent and logical except for when he spoke about demons. When he would speak about the entities in his home, his stories changed to be bizarre, fragmented, and illogical. His stories would also change each time he told them. She concluded that the boy did not suffer from any sort of psychotic disorder. The report said, and I quote, "This appears to be an unfortunate and sad case of a child who has been induced into a delusional system perpetrated by his mother and potentially reinforced by other relatives." LaToya's daughter and older son were also evaluated by clinical psychologist Joel Schwartz. He came to a similar conclusion. In his report, he said the following: "There also appears to be a need to assess the extent to which LaToya's daughter may have been unduly influenced by her mother's concerns that the family was exposed to paranormal experiences." LaToya herself was examined several times by psychologists. They claimed that she was guarded, but didn't seem to be suffering from psychosis or any thought disorder. One of them recommended that she be assessed to determine whether her faith may be masking underlying delusional ideations or perceptual disturbances. This case was looked into by 2 different individuals with 2 different ideologies. The first was American skeptic and paranormal investigator Joe Nickell. He said that Police Chief Austin was an admitted believer in the supernatural and would be easily convinced that something dark was happening. The photos taken at LaToya's house was not taken by professionals, therefore they couldn't be trusted. He also interviewed multiple witnesses and concluded that the supernatural events they spoke about were either misreported, exaggerated, embellished, or had non-supernatural explanations. For example, the children levitating in their beds was described by LaToya as something that raised the children off the bed and snatched them. To Joe, this implies that the children were throwing themselves upwards. As for LaToya's son walking up a wall, when it happened, Rosa was holding the boy's hand. This would allow him to push himself against the wall and walk up it. On top of this, Joe spoke to the Omen family's landlord, Charles Reed. He stated that neither he nor his prior tenants experienced any sort of supernatural activity in the house at any time. He said that LaToya was behind on her rent and she was using the paranormal as a way to avoid her payments. The tenants who moved in after the Omen family also did not have any paranormal events happen to them while living at the residence. The second individual who famously looked into this case was Zach Baggins. Zach is a well-known American paranormal investigator, television personality, museum operator, and author. He is the host of the Travel Channel series Ghost Adventures, along with his friends Nick Groft and Aaron Goodwin. He also stars in the TV show Deadly Possessions, which features Zach finding items for his haunted museum that he currently owns in Las Vegas. He also created and been part of multiple other paranormal shows, including Paranormal Challenge, Ghost Adventures Aftershocks, and Halloween Wars, just to name a few. In 2014, Zach bought the house of 200 Demons for $35,000 and filmed a documentary in it called The Demon House, which was released in 2018. Zach claimed that the documentary took longer to release than planned due to the volume of paranormal activity in the house. He said that crew members walked off the set and he had to fire a crew member who became aggressive after being affected by this house. He believed that the house was filled with so much evil that he decided to tear it down after filming. However, Zach had the basement stairs and some of the dirt from beneath it saved, and they are on display at his haunted museum. After Zach's documentary was released, it received different reviews. Dread Central's Steve Barton called it, and I quote, "one of the single most compelling documentaries on the existence of the supernatural that I've ever witnessed." The Los Angeles Times, on the other hand, called it hooey. Kenny Bindle, who was the chief investigator at the Committee of Skeptical Inquiry, called the film a pseudo-documentary. He said, and I quote once more, "meaning it's filmed in a documentary style but doesn't portray real events." Although this story sounds like fiction, the family and those who were involved in this case have stuck to their stories. The DCS believes that the real demons in the house were LaToya and her mother, pushing their religious beliefs onto the children, and the children used this to their advantage. As said by DCS case manager Christina Olenik's meeting notes dated January 10, 2013, the family is no longer fixated solely on religion to explain or cope with the children's behavior issues. But for LaToya and her family, she said it wasn't psychologists that helped her and her family. It was God. She said, and I quote again, "When you hear something like this, don't assume it's not real because I've lived it. I know it's real."
It's intermission time, folks. I'm your host, Mr. Edward October, and I'm here to pay tribute to an actor who became something of an accidental horror icon. I'm speaking, of course, of the late Sam Neill. Though it wasn't his first role, or even his first notable role, Neill first appeared on my radar as the leading man of 1981's The Final Conflict, meant, at the time, to be the epic conclusion to my beloved Omen franchise. In fact, I remember hearing about Neill being cast in Jurassic Park and thinking, wow, that's Damien Thorne from Omen 3. I was 11 years old when I first rented The Omen on VHS. It terrified me, haunted me for days, and I was hooked. I desperately started searching for the sequel, Damien, Omen 2, but couldn't find it anywhere. The third entry in the series, however, was readily available just about everywhere. And so I ended up watching Omen 3 long before I ever got the opportunity to watch the second installment.
I stand before you in the name of the one who is cast out from heaven, but is alive in me.
Behold the son of Satan. He's one step away from the world's most important position. And now, the fate of mankind rests in the hands of the most evil power on earth. Prepare for the concluding chapter of the Omen trilogy. The Final Conflict. Rated R.
The Omen and Damien, The Omen 2, told the story of Antichrist Damien Thorne as a young child and as a teenager, respectively. In The Final Conflict, and yes, that's the picture's on-screen title, not The Omen 3, we see that 32-year-old Damien is now the head of his family's multinational corporation, which has its tentacles in agriculture, famine relief, and U.S. politics. When the current U.S. ambassador to Great Britain mysteriously and elaborately commits suicide at a press conference, Damien is summoned by the president himself, played by old-time radio veteran and familiar-voiced Smuckers jelly spokesman Mason Adams, to fill the newly vacant position. At the same time, the Knives of Megiddo, those are the magic daggers from the first two films, which, according to the lore, are the only things that can kill the Antichrist, are found by a group of monks sworn to end Damien's bid for world domination. What's more, astronomers have identified an upcoming convergence of stars, which many believe to herald the second coming of Christ. From here, it's a game of cat and mouse, as Damien tries to identify and kill the new Christ child, whom he distractingly refers to as the Nazarene, and as the monks try to entrap and kill Damien. If you've never seen this picture and that synopsis intrigues you, pause it right here and go watch it, because from here on out, there be spoilers, matey. The Final Conflict is not a perfect film. Far from it, as a matter of fact. So let's just address the film's imperfections right off the bat. We'll start with a plot hole that I recognized at the tender age of 11, and which still grinds my gears more than 3 decades later. The plot revolves around this cabal of monks who've gotten their hands on the daggers of Megiddo. The 7 knives are distributed among the 7 monks, each one tasked with snuffing Damien, as if that will work. You see, in the first film, the archaeologist Bugenhagen, played by Leo McKern, one of my favorite character actors, explains that the first dagger is to be thrust into the Antichrist's heart. This dagger extinguishes his life. But to fully kill the Antichrist, the remaining 6 daggers must be used to pierce the body in specific locations, radiating out from the heart in order to end all spiritual life and power. In other words, to fully kill Damien and make it count, the monks require all 7 knives to be used. But the plot of The Final Conflict just chugs right along under the assumption that as long as you've got 1 knife, you can get the job done. Wrong. When I watched the movie for the first time, and the first of the monks loses his dagger, I remember thinking, well, the jig's up. There's no stopping Damien now. I'm not one of those people who notices lots of plot holes. I guess I'm just very good at suspending my disbelief. But if even I can find a hole in your plot, you've got a big problem. One other issue, and this is a small, nerdy nitpick. There's this scene where Damien recites a passage of biblical apocrypha.
Are you familiar with the Book of Hebron?
I don't know anything about the Book of Hebron.
It's in the Apocrypha, one of the more obscure backwaters of the Septuagint Bible. And it shall come to pass that in the end days the beast shall reign 130 days and nights. And the faithful shall cry unto the Lord, Wherefore art thou in the day of evil? And the Lord shall hear their prayers.
Did you catch that? Did you catch that little wherefore art thou? In this context, we're supposed to believe that wherefore translates to where. But wherefore literally means what for or why. When Juliet is hanging out of the balcony saying, Wherefore art thou, Romeo? She isn't saying, Romeo, oh Romeo, where are you, Romeo? No, she's asking, why are you Romeo? Why must you be a member of the family that is the sworn enemy of my own? This use of wherefore in the final conflict is incorrect, and any writer of ancient biblical apocrypha, and not a gun-for-hire screenwriter, would know this. Nitpicks aside, fans have many substantial, less pedantic criticisms of the final conflict. To start with, it plays as more of a political conspiracy thriller than the other films. The political angle was there from the very first scene of The Omen, and is very much foregrounded here, as much of the film takes place in and around embassies, political fundraisers, and even the White House. There's even a subplot involving an Israeli spy working as a mole for Thorn Industries, or some such thing. In the first film, all of the kills are primarily creative, Final Destination-like freak accidents perpetrated, one assumes, by the hand of Satan himself. The formula remains largely the same in Damien, Omen 2, but there are also secret disciples of Satan scattered throughout Damien's social circle who take a larger role in some of the bloodshed. In the final conflict, Damien is now the head of this secret society of Satanists. And so the kills are either done by someone working for Damien, or as the result of Damien, now in full control of his powers, using mind control. The least effective of these kills is when Damien commands a pack of foxhounds to maul a man to death. This may sound cool on paper, but on screen, it looks like the poor guy's about to get licked and snuggled to death by a pack of the goodest pups you've ever seen. Changing the formula, or the kill structure if you will, makes Damien come off more like a cult leader, crime boss, or Marvel supervillain than like the embodiment of satanic evil. This is ironic, because Richard Donner, the first film's director, was outspoken about the fact that he wanted The Omen to be agnostic towards the supernatural. Believers would see the strange events as the work of the devil. Non-believers would explain them away as freak accidents, hallucinations, and coincidences. As the series progresses, the role of supernatural forces becomes more explicit. So by placing Damien's supernatural powers towards the foreground in the final conflict, the character seems, paradoxically, more ordinary than he was when the presence of the supernatural was far more ambiguous. Speaking of Damien, this picture has a major protagonist problem. There's no one for the audience to root for. Damien Thorn himself is undoubtedly the film's protagonist, but he's also clearly the villain. Now, there are plenty of examples in film, television, and literature of villain protagonists that you actually root for. I mean, look no further than Breaking Bad, The Sopranos, Die Hard. Director John McTiernan always thought of Hans Gruber, not John McClane, as his protagonist. The Shield, and even, arguably, Psycho. I find myself rooting more for Jason Voorhees than for the parade of vapid teenagers he kills. So I'm not saying your villain can't be your protagonist, or that your villain can't be the guy you're rooting for. I'm just saying that you gotta like him. Adult Damien is far less likable and sympathetic than the teenage version of the character, played by Jonathan Scott Taylor in the previous film. But Damien Omen 2 is really William Holden's picture. So, who are we left with? All of the good guys are technically our antagonists. There are the monks, but they're all pretty bland and forgettable. I've seen the final conflict dozens of times, but I can't recall any of the monks' names. And aside from veteran Italian actor Rossano Brazzi, and maybe one other, I couldn't identify any of the monks out of a lineup of one. So while we may agree with their motives, they're not, "we're rooting for you" material. And let's face it, these guys never feel like a competent threat to Damien at any point in the film. That only leaves TV journalist Kate Reynolds, played by Lisa Harrow, like Sam Neill, also a New Zealander, a character written as a romantic interest for Damien and who functions as the heart and soul of the picture. But I just don't buy it. Her character arrives too late in the narrative, and I don't really believe the romance that she has with Damien. I mean, what does she see in him? If anything, she comes off as a negligent single parent, allowing her son to be groomed by a creepy man she just met. Confidentially, Sam Neill and Lisa Harrow must have saved all their romantic chemistry for when the camera wasn't rolling, because they would later have a son together. No, to solve the protagonist problem, the final conflict needed to make Damien really charming and really likable. Now, what I'm going to say next may sound like I'm shitting on Sam Neill's performance, which I'm not. Sam was just doing the best he could with the material he was given. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons that the final conflict is as compelling as it is thanks largely to Sam Neill's performance. Damien, as written, could have come off as a real mustache-twirling supervillain, what with all of his monologuing to a statue of Jesus and delivering sneering commands to his underlings. But it doesn't. Neill keeps this Damien from going too far off the rails and keeps him grounded with just enough charm and restraint. For what it's worth, Sam Neill has no illusions about this film or his performance. He stated that the film doesn't work, and while he may have had one or two good moments in the film, his performance ultimately doesn't work either, because the performance lives and dies by the effectiveness of the picture. Neill's best moment comes in the film's second half. He's at some event and he pulls his right-hand man aside to tell him in dark and sinister tones that he must find and kill the Nazarene, even if it means killing every child born on the date of the star alignment, even if it means killing his own newborn son. After delivering this shattering bit of dialogue, Damien walks away, but turns back towards his minion to cheerfully say, "Chin up, old boy." The final conflict needed more of that. Now, suppose just for a moment that they'd written and cast Damien Thorne to be genuinely likable and charming. I mean, really charming. What if they'd cast someone like Jimmy Stewart or Tom Hanks in the role? Someone who you find it impossible not to like and root for. Imagine watching the final conflict and thinking, "What do you mean this guy's the Antichrist? There must be some kind of mistake." It's a trick that Alfred Hitchcock tried to pull off a number of times, manipulating his audience into rooting for a monster. So after all of this, you're probably thinking, why the hell should I watch this dumb movie? True, it's full of problems. But every time I throw it on, I find it very watchable, in spite of itself. And in spite of all my criticisms, Sam Neill is quite good in it. The cat and mouse sequences between Damien and the monks are really entertaining and result in the picture's two best set pieces. The first involves the monks leading Damien to an abandoned church or monastery way out in the country. They think they're leading him into a trap, but they quickly learn what the Antichrist, at the height of his powers, is capable of. Another is Fox Hunt, on a misty, gray morning in the English countryside. What links both of these sequences are some fantastic real-world locations, cinematographers Philip Mayhew, Casino Royale, and Robert Painter, An American Werewolf in London, make the film look gorgeous without ever being overly flashy, and a sublime score by series regular Jerry Goldsmith. The music of Jerry Goldsmith is as essential to the Omen franchise as the characters of Damien Thorne and the devil himself. Even the later Omen pictures, not scored by Goldsmith, are haunted by his presence. The made-for-TV Omen 4 just reuses needle drops from the first 3 films. The ill-advised 2006 remake was scored by Goldsmith's protege, Marco Beltrami, who dedicated the remake score to his mentor. Even the recent The First Omen, which features the best non-Goldsmith score of the bunch, courtesy of Mark Corvin, truly sings when it incorporates Goldsmith's Ave Satani in its climax. In the liner notes to the deluxe edition of the soundtrack album, Robert Townsend explains that Jerry Goldsmith always wanted to compose an opera, but never really got the opportunity. The Final Conflict is the closest thing we have to a Jerry Goldsmith written opera. I would provide some direct quotes from these liner notes, but for the life of me, I can't find the disc packaging. I probably ripped the music to my digital library and then decluttered the case with the liner notes in it. Thanks a lot, Marie fucking Kondo. The score is indeed operatic and does much of the heavy lifting on the film. It gives the story an epic sense of grandeur that the film almost certainly would be lacking if scored by a lesser artist. It abandons the black mass creepiness of the Ave Satani theme, which permeates the first 2 movies. Instead, Damien's presence on a global scale is announced in the film's opening moments with a darkly majestic blast of brass, followed by the usual creepy chorus, now in a more operatic mode. This main title motif serves as Damien's theme throughout the picture. Other standout tracks include The Hunt, a rousing, propulsive piece that underscores one of the picture's best sequences. Another is The Second Coming, a track which begins with sinister intrigue and mystery as scientists begin to calculate the stellar alignment which will herald the coming of Christ. As this piece progresses, the voices of the usual satanic choir begin to murmur chaotically and out of sync, as if they are the voices of the wicked, cowering in fear from the second coming. The piece culminates with an angelic choir. This angelic motif, which in my head I refer to as the Christ triumphant theme, is later expanded upon about 5 minutes into the climactic track entitled The Final Conflict. Believe me, as someone who sang in the church choir for many years, when I tell you that this bit of music would fit right in at any Easter Sunday service, and it's far more beautiful than anything written for contemporary church services. The Final Conflict, as fun and flawed as it may be, truly does not deserve a score quite so sublime. When you listen to this music on its own, and unlike most film scores, Goldsmith was allowed to give these cues formal structure rather than punctuating action and dialogue on screen. You get the sense that this is more than a film score. I believe it is an expression of Goldsmith's own meditation on the conflict between good and evil. A work of art that begins in the depths of hell and despair and gradually ascends into the realms of holiness. Before I leave you, I just have to say that whenever I see engagement prompts on social media asking for who's the baddest or most powerful horror franchise villain, I always say that it's Damien Thorne. Think about it. Dracula, Frankenstein, Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers, all of those guys can be taken down, at least temporarily, by a bolt of lightning, sinking them to the bottom of a lake, locking them up in a basement of a burning house, shit like that. But to take down Damien, you need 7 magic knives and no less than the literal second coming of Jesus heckin' Christ. And when Jesus, the Nazarene, finally shows up It is a sight that is joyful, mysterious, hopeful, and tinged with that sense of cosmic horror one gets when reading about biblically accurate angels. In closing, should you watch The Final Conflict, aka The Omen 3, as a tribute to the late Sam Neill? Well, my answer is, what? What's that? Oh, folks, it seems as though intermission time's over. And here I am yapping away, and they're giving me the last call at our convenient modern snack bar. Better grab an extra bag of popcorn for the kiddies, because Act 2 of Octoberpod, featuring special guest Brenda from the podcast Horrifying History, starts now.
Welcome to Horrifying History, where you will hear about the unexplained and supernatural events that have stained the pages of history. Some houses are haunted because of what happened inside them. Others are haunted by what happened long before they were built. But in Pontefract, England, one house became infamous because of echoes of the past refused to stay buried. So break out your EMF scanners, my spooky friends. Today, you will hear the tale of what is said to be one of the most violent hauntings in British history. Pontefract is a small, centuries-old town in West Yorkshire, England, that is filled with history. The modern-day town can be traced back to Saxon times. It was listed in the Domesday Book, which is a comprehensive survey commissioned by William the Conqueror in 1086 to assess his kingdom and his wealth. During the 11th century, the town of Pontefract consisted of two localities, Tanshelf and Kirkby. Documents show that in 1069, William the Conqueror traveled to the area to suppress an uprising which plundered the area. On his trip towards Pontefract, William discovered that a river crossing near town was blocked by local insurgents who damaged the bridge. Historians believe that it was this event that gave the town its name. The name Pontefract comes from the Latin word for bridge, pons, and fractious meaning broken. The exact location of this former bridge is still debated, but it's thought to be about 2 miles or 3.2 kilometers away from where the town sits today. After the Norman conquest of the area in 1066, it came under the rule of William the Conqueror, and the lands became the property of his followers. One of these was Ilbert de Lacy, who built Pontefract Castle. It started as a wooden structure that soon evolved into stone. The de Lacy family lived in the castle for more than 2 centuries until 1348, with the death of Alice de Lacy. 2 years later, King Richard II was murdered in the castle. Today, little is known about his death other than what was written in William Shakespeare's play called Richard II, which portrays him as being responsible for the War of the Roses. William referred to both the town and the castle by saying, and I quote, "Pomfret, Pomfret, thou bloody prison, fatal and ominous to noble peers. Within thy guilty closure of thy walls, Richard II here was hacked to death. And, for more slander to thy dismal seat, we give thee up our guiltless blood to drink." During the English Civil War, which went from 1648 to 1649, the castle was under siege by Oliver Cromwell, who was considered to be one of the most important people in British history. He was a statesman, farmer, and soldier who was instrumental in establishing the Commonwealth of England, which he ruled as Lord Protector from December of 1653 until he died in 1658. After 3 sieges, the town was left impoverished. After the 3rd siege, residents feared another was coming, so they petitioned Parliament for the castle to be torn down, since it was a magnet for trouble. Demolition began in April of 1649, and the ruins are still standing today. After the demolition of the castle, the town of Pontefract turned its attention to repairing and rebuilding. Authorities also started looking for a new industry to provide the town with money that it desperately needed to rebuild. This is when they turned to licorice. It is believed that licorice was introduced to the country by crusaders who were returning from the Middle East. It was originally used as a medicinal plant, and the first candies would not appear until the 17th century. By 1742, licorice became a major industry, and the town of Pontefract became one of the leaders of this industry. By the 1930s, Pontefract's licorice was shipped around the world. But when the demand started to decline, Pontefract pivoted to chocolate. Today, the town remains famous for its manufacturing of delicious treats, but it found even more attention because of a famous poltergeist named the Black Monk of Pontefract. From the outside, 30 East Drive looks like any other post-war British home. It is a brick, 3-bedroom residence with a modest front and back gardens. But in 1966, this ordinary house became extraordinary when it became known as the most haunted house in Britain. Rumors say that it inspired writer Jay Anson to write a novel about another famous haunted house, the Amityville Horror. This house has been the inspiration for many different works, like Guy Leon Playfair's book called This House is Haunted, released in 1980, and James Wan's movie The Conjuring 2, which was released in 2016. One of the more famous movies that was inspired by 30 East Drive was released in 2012 and is called When the Lights Went Out. This movie follows the Maynard family, who moved into a new house only to be terrorized by a malicious entity. Set in 1974, this movie centers on 13-year-old Sally Maynard as she and her parents move into a new home that she discovers the family shares with 2 supernatural entities. The first appears to be the ghost of a young girl. The other is a malevolent entity. This entity focuses its attacks on Sally, which drives a wedge between her and her parents, who believe she's making everything up for attention. The assaults that the young girl goes through only gets worse, to a point where her family and friends believe her. But by then, it was too late. The case that inspired all of this was not originally investigated or documented by officials. Even though this case drummed up a lot of local interest, along with police officers, local politicians, and clergy who all claimed to see paranormal activity, it sat hidden within old local newspaper articles until it was found by a researcher who was looking into the history of the Cluniac monks in the region. The Cluniac reforms were a series of changes that happened within medieval religious practices when the Western Church started focusing on restoring traditional monks, encouraging the development of art, and caring for the poor. The movement started with the Benedictine Order of the Cluny Abbey, founded in the year 910 by William I, Duke of Aquitaine, and spread through France before it moved to England, Italy, Portugal, and Spain. The Cluniac Order was the first attempt at monastic reform in the 11th century. To ensure that formerly independent priorities were protected from politics, such as having to participate in the local feudal system, an institutional network was created so that affiliated monasteries reported directly to the Cluny Abbey. One of the buildings in this network was created in Pontefract, and one of the monks who was believed to be there made this location famous. In August of 1966, Jean and Jode Pritchard moved into 30 East Drive with their 2 children, Philip, age 15, and Diane, age 12. None of them before moving had any interest in the supernatural, but that would soon change when they realized they were not alone in their new home. Disturbances allegedly started right after the Pritchard family moved in. Not long afterwards, Philip was home with his grandmother, Sarah Scrolles, who was staying with him when his parents and sister went away for a week. Even though it was hot outside, the inside of the house was strangely cold. One day, Philip walked into the living room to see a fine white dust falling silently from chest height all around the room. Philip told Sarah what he had seen, and the two went into the living room to investigate. They quickly became confused. It would make sense if this white dust was falling from the ceiling, since the home was recently renovated, but appearing in mid-air made no sense whatsoever. Sarah called Philip's Aunt Marie, who lived across the street, to come over and see what they were seeing. After arriving, Marie couldn't figure out the source of the dust either, but she knew it had to be cleaned up before Jean, Joan, and Diane got home. She went into the kitchen to get a rag to clean it up, and promptly slipped in a puddle of water that wasn't there when she came into the house. Marie was annoyed and cleaned up the water. She then saw another puddle nearby and wiped that up too. Then she saw another and another, so she called in a local water company, which sent a plumber to the home. The plumber could not find any source for these puddles, so Marie returned home while Philip and Sarah moved on with their day. Then around 7 p.m., Sarah heard Philip's voice calling out from the kitchen saying, "Grandma, it's happening again." Sarah rushed to the kitchen to find it a huge mess. Loose tea and sugar were all over the counters. The button on the family's tea dispenser clicked and then depressed, which splashed hot tea on top of the mess. The dispenser kept on going up and down on its own. The machine kept hissing and throwing out even more hot water until it was all gone. It went down faster and faster until Sarah yelled out, "Stop! Stop it!" That's when Philip and Sarah heard a huge crash coming from the hallway. The hall was dark and empty, and then suddenly, the hall light turned on by itself. While this was happening, various lights in the home started turning on and off by themselves, and then the central breaker itself turned off on its own. When Sarah and Philip witnessed a heavy chest swaying with no one near it, the two went to sleep at a neighbor's home out of fear that something might be in their home. They returned home the next morning, and nothing else happened for 2 years. The two convinced themselves that maybe they just imagined what happened that night. But just when everyone started to relax, the entity came back full force. Over time, the phenomena started to accelerate. Loud crashing sounds became part of the Pritchard family's everyday life. What started as subtle turned hostile and violent. Furniture would move and overturn on its own. Items would disappear and reappear later in strange places. Knives were being thrown by unseen hands across rooms. A heavy grandfather clock was smashed, and crockery would fly off the kitchen shelves. Green foam would bubble out of the sinks, and Marie had an entire carton of milk dumped onto her head by something otherworldly. Then, physical attacks started. Diane was thrown out of bed, and on several occasions, she would wake up on her bedroom floor with her bed's mattress on top of her. She was slapped, scratched, and her hair was pulled. Witnesses saw her being dragged upstairs by an unseen force. Even though it appeared that the focus of the attacks were on Diane, everyone is affected by what was happening in the house. There were sudden bangs without a source, the sounds of somebody whispering, and the family photos were brutally slashed by someone unseen. None of this drove the Pritchards to leave. They felt it was their house, so the ghost had to be evicted. The Pritchards decided to force the spirit out through multiple exorcisms. These resulted in the walls weeping water and people getting slapped. The entity would try to push people down the stairs, and it would turn crosses that were in the house upside down. Then one night, Jean and Joe saw the entity that was causing all of their problems. It was tall, dark, and hovering over their bed. It quickly disappeared. The Pritchards' neighbors, as well as all the home's inhabitants, started to see the entity around the property. It was tall, wearing a cloak with a hood, and his face was not visible. The family decided to call the entity Fred. Later, people started calling the spirit the Black Monk, since it looked like a shadowy figure wearing a black hooded robe. The entity would mostly be seen standing silently in the background or in corners of a room. And then the entity got worse. Family and visitors alike would get pushed, slapped, scratched, and bruised in the home. Whenever the Black Monk would appear, he would be accompanied by extreme cold and a sudden silence. Then one day, the spirit allegedly physically dragged Diane up an entire flight of stairs as she screamed in terror. This incident left her traumatized and with finger-shaped bruises on her throat. Then, just like that, the activity stopped. It was like the spirit was done and over whatever made him cranky in the first place. But the living were not done with the Black Monk. When Cluniac monk researcher and expert Tom Clemeth heard what happened at the Pritchard's home, he was able to put some of the puzzle pieces together. In the 16th century, a Cluniac monk had been convicted of sexual assault and murder of an adolescent girl who happened just to be the same age as Diane. This monk was hanged for his crime, and the gallows were located just across the street from where the Pritchard's house was standing. Public executions were common during medieval times. Their purpose was to scare the local population into obedience by showing them what would happen if they broke the law. They also reinforced the power of the king and the local authorities and were thought of almost like a sporting event. These events were gruesome and were often used to humiliate the offender while still alive. Could this haunting be tied to the historical violence of the land the house sits on? Or was it all caused by a man who was killed for his crimes? These events were fascinating for many, and that include Pat Holden, who was a Pontefract native and was related by marriage to Jean Pritchard. Pat was so excited when he heard about Tom's discovery that he decided to make a movie called When the Lights Went Out. This indie film got mixed reviews, and it reignited the imagination of paranormal lovers everywhere. But it was said that it reignited the haunting. When the film's producer, Bill Bungay, discovered that the house was going up for sale, he decided to buy it. He thought that the ghost talk was just that. Talk. When his phone started acting strange when in the house and getting reports of strange lights and sounds coming from the house, he just shrugged it all off. Even when a psychic attending the movie's premiere told him that she saw Fred the ghost watching him from his favorite spot on the home stairs, Fred thought that all of this was just a joke. One night, Bill was outside 30 East Drive alone. He was locking the gate after a day of shooting his movie. He put the plunger of the gate down and then secured it with a cinder block. He then turned to lock the house up for the night, but his house key was gone. It had somehow disappeared from his pocket. He turned back to the gate and he saw what made the hair on his arms stand on end. The gate he just locked up was standing wide open. It was here that Bill realized that the reports over the years were true. Neighbors reported seeing the home's lights flash on and off when no one was there, and hearing banging sounds emanating from the property during the early morning hours. Local police officers, along with a local member of parliament, claimed to have witnessed objects moving in the house on their own. A local priest came to the property multiple times to perform exorcisms, but the reaction was always hostile. Allegedly, the ghost responded so badly to the presence of a man of God being on the property that it painted upside-down crosses on the home's walls and destroyed crucifixes after holy water was used in the home. After all of that, Bill decided to show the Black Monk of Pontefract more respect. Even though the monk still threw things at him, Bill decided to rent out 30 East Drive to those interested in the haunting. This has resulted in the documentation of 288 accounts of paranormal activity in the house and many interesting photos. In one event, some of the neighbors decided to visit. As the adults were talking, the neighbor's granddaughter came in the front door, biting into a fake orange. Her grandmother took the orange from her and told her that it wasn't a real orange to eat. She asked where her granddaughter found it. The little girl replied, "A man in black gave it to me." In another incident, a group that was going to see the house arrived earlier than their scheduled time. On the off chance that someone was inside, they tried the front door. It was locked. As the group turned away and walked towards the street, they heard someone loudly and aggressively banging on one of the house's windows to get their attention. They presumed that there was someone inside and checked the door again. It was locked. The group found out that it was firmly locked and vacant when another tour group showed up half an hour later. Over the years, investigators, ghost hunters, and thrill seekers have flocked to 30 East Drive in hopes of seeing something supernatural. Some took photos that show an image of a ghost girl in the house. It is believed that the monk had sexually assaulted other young girls, and these children may be still attached to the house. People have seen a dark shadow person in various places on the property. Orbs are commonplace, and objects are consistently being moved. In one instance, people visiting the home used a small pitcher to fill up a dog bowl. They left the jug on the floor in the front room. The visitors started to chat, and after a short time, they decided to see if their dog had something to drink. What they discovered was that the small pitcher was somehow filled with water once more when no one else was in the house. Skeptics think that all of this is a hoax, a misinterpretation of events, or psychological expectations. The problem with this theory is that some of the witnesses were police officers, clergy, and neighbors. There also has been many paranormal cameras that captured unexplained anomalies. Skeptics explain all this away, blaming it on old plumbing, wiring, and an old structure, but this has been ruled out on many occasions. Over the years, many people tried to explain what happens at 30 East Drive. The most popular theory is that a 16th century monk from a nearby Cluniac Priory was executed in front of the home for sexually assaulting a young girl. Then, much later, a house was built on this emotionally charged site, resulting in a haunting. Others believe that since the house sits on a site near a 1644 battleground, the hauntings are linked to the hastily buried souls from the battlefield, which manifests as a shadow being. Another theory is that the Black Monk is not one soul or even several souls. Due to the violence of the being, its assaults, and its seemingly deliberate destruction of religious items, some believe that the entity was never human. They believe that it's a demon or an elemental spirit that feeds on negative energy. An elemental spirit is a mythic supernatural being that represents one of the four fundamental elements: earth, fire, air, and water. They are often viewed as nature spirits that protect forests, manage weather, or guard minerals. They can be benevolent, mischievous, and at times angry. If the entity is an elemental, what is it protecting and why is it so angry? The next theory is the poltergeist theory. In the paranormal world, poltergeists are a type of haunting that's responsible for physical disturbances. This can include loud noises and objects getting moved or destroyed. It is also said that they can harm the living through hitting, biting, scratching, or pinching. They can lift items and throw them, as well as create bad smells and knock on walls and doors. In some occurrences, they have allegedly caused electrical issues or created spontaneous fires. This type of spirit is not like other ghosts. While regular hauntings tend to stretch over years, even centuries, poltergeist activity only lasts a few months. Also, unlike other spirits, poltergeists often focus their energy on a person rather than a place. The biggest difference between a poltergeist and a ghost is that a ghost can scare you, but a poltergeist could scare and hurt you. Poltergeists typically attach to a specific person, often an adolescent, and particularly young females. Their targets are often experiencing high levels of stress, anxiety, or repressed emotions. In this case, much of the energy was focused on 12-year-old Diane. The family were under stress because they just moved, and this could easily have been affecting Diane. Parapsychologists have suggested that poltergeist activity could be explained with psychokinesis. This is an alleged psychic ability that allows individuals to influence something physical without any physical interaction. Could it be that Diane's stress was a lot more than her family thought, and her unknown ability caused havoc in the family home? Well, the problem with this theory is that the activity continued long after the Pritchard family moved out. Another possibility is that all of this was a hoax or psychological. Many believe that all of this was either attention-seeking or perhaps stress-induced. Often, paranormal phenomena are linked to psychological, social, and cognitive factors rather than the paranormal. Haunted people syndrome, known as HPS, is a term used when an individual frequently reports supernatural experiences as a way to cope with underlying stress and trauma. These reports are often reinforced by a need for attention and validation. If you add in that these beliefs are often encouraged by those around the individual, social media, and a desire for belonging, this could result in what looks like a haunting. Whether haunted by a vengeful spirit, a poltergeist, an echo of an ancient death, or created from a stressed person's mind, 30 East Drive and the Black Monk of Pontefract remains a mystery. Some say that the past never dies. It just waits patiently in the shadows for its time to be noticed.
Stick around after the credits for a brief message from some of our favorite podcasters, creators, and friends. There may even be some bloopers, outtakes, and bonus content as well.
To learn even more about Horrifying History, visit our website. When there, you will find links to all of our social media and our YouTube channel, which features not just our podcast episodes, but also additional history-based videos for your enjoyment. We also have a blog that's filled with spooky topics and episode updates to read up on. And on top of this site is the home to our fan club, which has excellent perks, like your own feed to listen to our show ad-free, access to our new episodes a week early, as well as a new bonus episode each week. It's also the home to our store that's filled with spooky merchandise that you guys will love. For our fan club members, you will get a permanent discount in our store for the time that you're a fan club member.
You have been listening to Octoberpod. Octoberpod is produced, edited, and directed by Edward October. The series co-producers are Amber Jordan, Whitney Zahar, and producer emeritus MJ McAdams. Additional audio engineering for select segments provided by Kevin of Straight Line Creative. Logo and banner graphics by Jessica Good. Edward October character design by Nick Calavera. Select stock photography and illustrations courtesy of unsplash.com. Thorax theme from Octoberpod and Overture from Bigfoot Apocalypse, composed and performed by Nico Vitezi. Select music and FX cues courtesy of freesound.org. All other stock photography, illustrations, music, and FX cues, except where noted, are derived from Creative Commons sources or from sources and recordings within the public domain. All stories, essays, scripts, and audio plays performed on Octoberpod AM or Octoberpod Home Video are the intellectual property of their creators. Octoberpod retains the rights to the resultant audio productions and related promotional materials. Any content produced by Octoberpod may not be sold and distributed outside of Octoberpod or used to train AI models without the express written permission of the content owners. Octoberpod was conceived and performed in its entirety by real human creators. Generative AI was not used to produce Octoberpod, and it never will be. For business inquiries or story submissions, email octoberpod@gmail.com. Follow us on the dumpster fire formerly known as Twitter at OctoberpodVHS, on Instagram at OctoberpodVHS, on Blue Sky at octoberpod.bsky.social, or on the World Wide Web at octoberpodvhs.com. The man who spoke to you was Mr. Edward October.
Hello friends, are you feeling down? Do you need a pick-me-up? Well, look no further, for I have the solution. Just go to your nearest podcast store and pick up a box of Backlit Cinema, the podcast. That's right, folks. Backlit Cinema, the podcast, will cure what ails you. The sweet, smooth, and gentle chit-chat of the movies of yesteryear will fulfill your aching nostalgia and improve your overall well-being. The soothing sounds of your host, Zoe Richardson, talking about your favorite moments of these classic films is guaranteed to lift your spirits. The behind-the-scenes trivia that you'll learn will fill you with awe and wonderment. Don't hesitate. Try Backlook Cinema, the podcast, now with no artificial flavors or colors.
Warning, the aforementioned claims of improved well-being or is a cure to any ailment cannot be substantiated.
Hey, you. Yes, you. Are you looking for a new podcast that appeals to your scientific curiosity, but is also a little bit spooky?
Show me how I died in a past life.
Well, look no further, because this cat is where it's at.
He had concerns about the ethics surrounding AI, feeling they had achieved consciousness.
Curious Cat Podcast examines the shadowy space where science and the supernatural collide. Listen every week with your host, Jennifer Holtz, as she and her guests explore what it means to be a soul in a meat suit.
We were healing karma together. They were all kind of predestined to resolve something.
Listen on all your favorite streaming apps and continue the conversation on Twitter at CuriousCatPodCA, or find Jennifer and all her links at Jennifer L. Holtz, spelled HOTES.com.
Welcome to Brew Crime, a true crime and beer podcast. Join me, Mike.
And me, JT.
As we explore the world of crime, conspiracies, or whatever catches our attention. This is a podcast where we pick a theme, cover a few cases, and pair them with a brew.
Between themes, we do what we call Brew Crime News. A funny look at current news stories, be it crime, animals, sports, or even celebrities.
You can find us on all social media at Brew Crime. Our website is brewcrime.com. And you can find us on any podcast app at Brew Crime Podcast.
Join us as we discuss the horrible crimes that surround us, and maybe, definitely, tip a bottle or two back as you do it. Drink with us weekly.
Music FX. Hey, how about some fucking fox hunting music? In The Final Conflict, yes, that's the picture's on-screen title, not the Omen 3. Did I say in? Which many believe to be a sign of the second coming of Christ. No. Which many believe are a harbinger. Which many believe to be Neil's comes in the film's second half. Neil's what? What the f*** am I talking about? Wow. This is what I have written. Now that I'm going to saw next may sound like fucking hell. I jotted this script down one afternoon, sitting in a mod pizza, writing as fast as I could because I've been behind on deadlines ever since Dungeon Punk. Dungeon Punk really wrecked my schedule this summer. So, a little behind the scenes, a little inside baseball, a little behind the music, Octoberpod. Isn't that how the behind the music would go? Anybody who had VH1 on a constant loop in college would have that music burned in their brain, much like myself. Or as the result of Damien, now in full control of his powers. How many times have I fucking said that? In Psycho, our heroine and point of view character is killed off at the end of the first act. In her absence, we find ourselves in Norman Bates's shoes, sympathizing with Norman Bates and hoping that Norman Bates is successful in disposing of all the evidence. You know what? I didn't write that Psycho bit very well, so I'm gonna end it here. Thanks a lot, Marie fucking Kondo. In The Final Conflict, Damien, now fully in control of his own satanic powers. No. In The Final who wrote this fucking thing, huh? Played by old-time radio veteran and familiar-voiced Smuckers jelly spokesman Mason Adams, to fill the newly vacant position. Let me do that whole fucking thing again. Fiend. Fiend. Did you hear that static? Okay.
Berry after berry, jar after jar, spoon after spoon. Smuckers strawberry preserves and jam are America's favorite. That's because America loves that all-natural, just-picked flavor Smuckers is famous for. Berry after berry, spoon after spoon, jar after jar. With a name like Smuckers, it has to be good.